Today's video is going to be about the animated army raccoon-based commander deck, which is the 4th Bloomburrow commander deck. We've reviewed all the others, so without further ado, we're going to hop right in and take a look. Alright everybody, thank you so much for being here. As always, I truly do appreciate each and every one of you that take the time to watch. If you do enjoy the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and then click the bell icon if you want to stay notified. If you haven't had a chance to see any of the previous videos covering a lot of the Bloomburrow stuff, you can definitely check them out. They're all going to be in the playlist below. And this is the last commander deck to kind of go through. So as usual with these, we're going to take a look at the new cards, look at my general thoughts. I do think so far the Squirrel deck is the strongest by far, but that could change because with these cards I've only really kind of glossed over them, and what I try to do when I'm doing these videos is kind of give a live reaction. I mean, obviously I'm going to look at the cards a little bit because I have to edit the video and piece it together and kind of review them, but I try to go into it with a relatively blank slate so that I can give some, genuine feedback on it. And so I kind of posed the question to you guys before we dive into this. What do you guys think is the best of the 4 commander decks? Curious what people are buying, and sort of where you're going to be putting your money. So without further ado, let's jump into this. And starting us off is going to be the face commander for this deck. That is Bello, Bard of the Brambles. Now, this is 1 red-green legendary creature, Raccoon Bard, and it says, during your turn, each non-equipment artifact and non-aura enchantment you control with mana value 4 or greater is a 1/1 elemental creature in addition to its other types and has indestructible, haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, this is a really unique commander in terms of its effect application. It's not the only commander that can turn your enchantments into creatures. There are other cards that can do that as well. Onyxia from Commander Masters last year actually does that. However, what makes this one stand out to me a little bit more is the fact that it not only turns them into creatures, but gives them indestructible and haste and turns them into resource management, so you're able to actually draw some cards off of them. So all of those things combined actually makes this a pretty strong card, depending on what other things we're going to be playing with it, because there's different artifacts that this essentially can turn any of your mana rocks into creatures. It can't do anything with equipments, obviously, which I think kind of makes sense. You get very confusing, I think, results if you turn an equipment into a creature while it was equipped to something else, and it's probably a ruling's nightmare, honestly. So I kind of understand the logistics behind not doing that, but it opens the door for a ton of different things, and it also kind of gives you resources, gives them haste, and you can buff them up, and there may even be some synergy with elementals there. So this is going to be a really fun commander, I think, and I'm kind of really excited to see how it plays. I hope that this is on Arena. In the past couple sets, they've put a few of the commanders on Arena from the sets, so that would be awesome if they did it with these 4. We'll have to see, though. I don't know what that's going to look like just yet, but we should know next week when the official release actually happens. Wildsear Scouring Maw is the other commander for this deck. It is 3 red-green legendary creature elemental wolf with trample and says enchantment spells you cast from your hand have Cascade. It's not exactly the flashiest commander, but it is very powerful and pretty efficient, all things considered. Cascade is definitely one of the strongest mechanics, and there are a lot of enchantments that, will benefit from that, and this is going to take the deck in a very different direction, I think, than Bramble is, but it doesn't mean in a bad way, just in a very different way, but it's a cool card, and I think this is supposed to be one of the Calamity Beasts, so kind of cool to see that, that bit of interaction there with again, I've said this before, but like all the storytelling with this set and the way that they've added so much lore through the cards and through the art, it's a lot of fun. But I think Wildsear's okay. It's definitely not as good, in my opinion, as the face commander, but it's going to be a card that people will like, and I think it will work quite nicely as a commander, just with a slightly different playstyle. Speaking of enchantments, we've got Alchemist Talent, which is 3 in a red enchantment class, and its level 1 says when it enters, create 2 tapped treasure tokens. When you level it up to level 2, it says treasures you control have tapped, sacrifices artifact, add 2 mana of any color. And if it gets to level 3, it says whenever you cast a spell, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it, this class deals damage to that spell's mana value equal to that to each opponent. Pretty damn solid across the board. The treasure token generation is pretty cool. You're paying 4, you're getting 2 treasures, so, you know, you're, I guess, investing some of it in future turns. However, the ability to turn your treasures into essentially double the amount of mana, similar to Goldspan Dragon. If you're playing a lot of treasures or playing a deck themed around treasures, this level 2 effect is going to be really good and is absolutely going to be worth the cost to put this out. The third one, I think, is still really good. Obviously, if you're making treasures, you're going to be using it, but I don't know if it's, you know, I don't know if it's the most powerful effect of the card. It's definitely not something that if you have a turn where maybe you don't have as many plays to make, and you can get that to its level and be able to kind of use that on future turns to start dealing extra damage to all of your opponents at once, it's certainly good. Overall, though, I think the second effect is the strongest. That's not to say that the card as a whole is not good, because I think all of the class enchantments, for the most part, for this cycle have been really solid and are going to be good additions to their respective colors. Brightcap Badger is 3 and a green. Badger Druid. It is an instant adventure on the left side for 2 and a green. This is create 2 1/1 green sapperling creature tokens. If you play it as a creature, it says each fungus and sapperling you control has tap add green. At the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. Pretty cool, pretty well rounded. The sapperling, you know, instant side of it actually sets up playing it as a creature second, because then you have extra mana dorks out that you can use, and in decks that are devoted to kind of spamming the board with the fungus and sapperling tokens, you can amass a lot of mana very quickly while continuing to generate your own tokens with this. Again, I don't mean to, there's not too much to say other than it's a really solid card that I think, on paper anyway, seems to be quite good, and it doesn't cost too much where it's not going to be worth inclusion, so pretty good, well done. Evercoat Ursine is 4 and a green, creature elemental bear with trample, and then 2 instances of Hideaway 3. Hideaway says when the creature enters, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 face down, and then put the rest on the bottom of your deck in random order. Basically, you're doing this twice, and then when it deals combat damage to a player, if there are cards exiled with it, you may play one of them without paying its mana cost. So you're basically going to look at the top 6 cards of your deck, 3 and 3, pick 2 to put kind of away, and then as you start to deal damage with this thing, you can play those cards for free. We've seen like lands that have the hideaway mechanic and stuff, so it's not brand new to the set, but it is a pretty solid mechanic, especially in green where you're playing a lot of high cost creatures in certain decks. I like it. It's, you know, it costs 5, so it's not too bad, and it does have trample, so it's likely going to get through. If it can survive and start, you know, dealing some damage, you do have the ability for some explosive plays. Now, my personal favorite card from this little round of things here is Prosperous Bandit. I just love the art on this so much. It is 2 and a red, creature raccoon rogue with offspring 1. It has first strike, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you create that many tapped treasure tokens. I really can't say enough good things about this card. You know, it's a 3 mana 2/2 that can, you know, sort of pay for itself with just 1 or 2 attacks. And obviously, if you do happen to pay that extra 1 to offspring, you can start generating tons of treasure tokens each turn if you're able to get through with the attacks. It's also, you know, the first strike is certainly not a negative. It's a nice added bonus to have, and it'll combo well with Alchemist talent, where you're making treasures consistently, and then you're able to use those treasures for more mana. Just well designed, I think balanced enough, but definitely strong, to a point where I think in decks that want to focus on treasure in general, this card's really going to be worth some attention, not just in a raccoon-based deck. Unfortunately, I think this deck, I was kind of hoping was going to be more of a raccoon kindred deck. It's not. There's, you know, there are raccoons in the deck, but they don't really matter in the sense of them being raccoons, right? So there are some cool raccoon cards that came out in the main set that I think will work if you wanted to maybe build some kind of a kindred strategy there, but I don't think any of these cards are going to be like explicitly like great for the purpose of being a raccoon. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway, next. Pyreswipe Hawk is 3 and 2 red, creature elemental bird with flying and haste. When it attacks, it gets +X/+0 till end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. When you expend 6, gain control of up to 1 target artifact for as long as you control Pyreswipe Hawk. Expend is when you spend your, you know, X, whatever the expend number is, so in this case it's 6. When you spend your 6 total mana for the turn casting a spell, you then expend, you can take control of an artifact, and obviously that can buff this. It's pretty solid overall. I think the ability to take control of the artifacts and the fact that it does have haste, so it's likely going to get through at least once, unless your opponent has like another flyer to block with, means it can kind of be a power card. It's a little on the costly side, I think, but it also does have a lot going for it that I think, you know, that kind of makes it worth playing. This again is one of those cards that like I'm reading and I'm looking at and I'm thinking of different scenarios where like as long as you can be sure that you're going to get an attack through, even if you're playing in a pod, like it's not likely that all of your opponents are going to all have flying. So you can attack, you know, a different opponent and then take the, you know, whatever opponent may be the most problematic or in the lead, you can take their artifact. It doesn't care who's, you know, you don't have to take an artifact from the person you damage. So there's obviously that going for it. Overall though, pretty cool card. Now, this one is really goofy, but it's also kind of intriguing. It's Rolling Hamsphere. This is a 7-drop artifact vehicle. It gets +1/+1 for each hamster you control. When it attacks, you create 3 1/1 red hamsters, then deal X damage to any target where X is the number of hamsters you control. It also has crew 3. So it's sort of like a mere battle sphere in a way, except it's a vehicle, so obviously that's a bit of a hamsterance, maybe? And it puts a hamster on things? I don't know. It's cute, it's costly, but if you can kind of get it going even once, like, you're then getting the 3 tokens, you're dealing a good number of damage there, and as you start to, I mean, thematically speaking, right, it's a giant ball of hamsters. As you add more hamsters, it gets stronger. So while it's funny from a thematic perspective, I do think it's decent. Again, a little costly, but artifact decks typically don't have a way to, you know, I don't have too much of a problem kind of cheating stuff out, and you can kind of crew it on future turns with the hamsters that it makes, so there is also that going for it. I like it. I'm not going to write it off, I just kind of want to see it in practice. Alright, Thickest in the Thicket is 3 and 2 green enchantment. When it enters, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature where X is that creature's power. At the beginning of your end step, draw 2 cards if you control the creature with the greatest power or tied for the greatest power. Alright, obviously the counter generation is good, and the fact that you can kind of continue to use this and get resources off of it is solid. Strikes me as a little costly for the mana in terms of like being worth playing, but then again, essentially doubling the power of a creature if it doesn't have any counters on it. I don't know, what do you guys think of this one? It seems good, it just seems costly as well, but I don't know. I feel like I want to write it off, but then something in my brain says like there's got to be combos with it, and I'm not seeing them, so I don't know. Let me know what you think. And lastly, we've got Trailtracker Scout. It's 1 and a green creature raccoon scout that can tap to add 1 mana of any color. Whenever you expend 8, return up to 1 target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. 8 is pretty costly for sure, but this is still a solid mana dork that can, you know, it's like it costs 2, you get a 1/3 that can tap. And then, you know, as long as it's on the board, as long as you're starting to do stuff in later turns, it's basically an Eternal Witness that you can use each turn. Not bad to get stuff back to the hand. Is it mind-blowing? No. If it cost just 1 green, I think it would be insane, but it'd probably be way too good also. It'd just basically be like a better Birds of Paradise. So, as I'm saying it out loud, I kind of understand why that's not the case. But overall, I think it's pretty cool. I think the deck as a whole has a lot of neat cards, and I do just want to quickly mention, too, the Imagine Critter inclusion in this deck is Domri, Anarch of Bolas. You know, it looks really cool. It's a good card. I wish that they had put some of the better reprints in there just to really add a little bit of value to the decks in terms of, like, you know, Squirrel deck could have had Chatterfang in the Imagine style. This could have had maybe, I don't know, maybe Nissa, maybe one of the better ones. You know what I mean? Generally speaking, like one that is a really good reprint and a card that adds a bit of value towards the deck as a whole, because we know the MSRP keeps going up. Well, MSRP in quotes, obviously. But as a whole, I do think the deck is pretty cool. I like a couple of the cards quite a lot, and I think the Commander opens up a lot of fun playstyles. This definitely is not the strongest of the 4, which is a shame because it's the one I was most excited for. But I think all 4 decks have some, you know, merit, and it's going to be fun. This is a really hype set that a lot of people are looking forward to playing, and I'm one of them. I'm very excited to kind of get my hands on these cards and start playing around with some stuff. So let me know what you guys want to see in terms of content as it relates to these decks, upgrade guides, things like that, and I'll continue to make the videos. But until next time, I'll see you. Peace.